Hey, Sav.
Hey Shay, and bonjour brand connoisseurs. Welcome to the Art of Branding podcast on the Team SCG podcast network. So Shay, rate your day without any context.
7.2.
Out of
10. What about you?
I would say 5.
5? If it was above a 5, I wasn't going
Out
to
of
ask.
5.
Oh, okay. I was going to say if it was above a 5, I was going to leave it at no context, but out of 5, I have to know who screwed you.
Well, I knew that was going to keep you on your toes. Okay. So Shay, what's the elephant in the room?
I think it's that we started a podcast and no one really knows why.
I mean, I think that that's quite the elephant in the room, all things considered, because this has been our brainchild for quite some time now.
And she's coming to life.
Exactly. Considering you're here, you're in an interesting chair as the CEO of our company.
Fair. So, yeah, we could start with me.
I'll just kick it over to you.
Yeah, I found myself working for my family business that I didn't think was going to be my case as I was growing up, and then started, playing around with maybe nursing and hated it. Went into business class and loved it, and then just faced the inevitable that I was going to be here, and I wanted to be the best that I could if I was going to join my family company and kind of kill it on that front. So joined the company, started in sales, worked my way up in sales, got into management, knew that that's what filled my cup. Just helping people, mentoring people, and developing teams. And then organically ended up in the CEO chair once my dad decided it was time for him to step down.
Organically ended up in the CEO chair.
Inherently.
No, but it's just funny because you're like, yeah, I ended up in management because I decided that's what filled my cup. And then I, just organically ended up in the CEO chair.
Well, there's a little bit of nepotism in there, but we'll talk about that on a different episode.
No, that'll be a whole different episode, but just the way you so nonchalantly were just like, okay, yeah, and I just ended up
because it sometimes still feels like we're playing Monopoly and I've yet to unearth that.
But the slice of humble pie that you just served out there to the listeners, it's pretty solid. And you're leaving a few things out, but obviously that's something that we can totally unpack in another episode as far as,
what that looks like. But let's give an overview on yourself.
Oh,
and the chair of which you sit.
Gosh, you're kicking it over to me. So I am the VP of Business Development and Marketing here at Team SCG. I've come from.
Very impressive.
Thank you. It's no C-suite, but it'll do.
One day.
One day. But basically, I ended up at this company, and this is something that we'll unpack in a completely different episode in future. But I ended up in this chair in a very roundabout way. This chair, this industry, this company.
Fair.
I'm a product of COVID and that kind of I'm a product of COVID. I came in when there was literally nothing going on in the industry, as in, the whole world as far as economics go, But I was able to come in here, build a book of business that, turned into a little something. And
I was gonna say,
yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah. No, it's pretty casual. Again, we'll dive into this more later, but kind of realized that I have a passion and one could say even a knack for finding new business, talking about our story, communicating our story, and then that kind of pivoted into the whole business development and marketing realm of our company. It's funny because we're a company full of marketers, but we never had a formal marketing department per se. And so it's something that I've been so graciously tasked with building out. And a lot of what I'm trying to do here as, marketing team SCG is doing it in a very different way. We have spoken about this at length, you and I beforehand, but we're in an industry that is very old and stale.
Crusty and dusty, as you say.
Yeah, if you will. But this is something that, we figured would be a way for us to tell our story in a very conversational way that people can understand not only what it is that Team SCG is as a whole and the story behind it, all the little magic here and there, but also, the relationship with us, which is an interesting one.
To say the least. I think it's weird too, and I'm glad you brought up the staleness of our industry, because we're shoppers. Like we shop for corporations, and we merchandise and brand large enterprise businesses. So like it's something that's a lot of fun. But for some reason, when I entered the company after college, it was just no one our age was doing it. No one knew about it. And then all of a sudden, it was like all of the buyers or our clients became our age, and we were speaking the same language. It took off so quickly because once people saw that we were having fun, it was very easy to explain what we do. But before that, it's like no one our age, no one had any idea like what this industry even was.
Exactly. And like by being able to communicate that through this type of medium is something that is really, really exciting to us, because, it's not just a cold email or even a cold call. It's going to be something that like we're going to be able to like hop on and obviously dive into more about us, but then also our partners. We're going to address a big elephant in the room and bring on clients. We're going to bring on even, competitors that have become our friends in the industry. But these are conversations that we're going to have here so people that are listening can understand our industry better, because
and it doesn't have to be such a hush hush thing. Like what we do is fun, what we do is cool. Let's talk about it.
And we're very behind, like our industry is very behind the scenes. You have so many like influencers and brands that send out these beautiful boxes, and everybody accredits those brands and influencers and people for creating them. And they definitely have their hands in it, but there's
not how the sausage is made.
Exactly. That is not how the sausage is made. And we're over here with the meat casing, just stuffing the sausage. Sorry, that's really foul.
You guys, you'll get to know a little bit of behind the scenes. Like, let's see what the Wizard of Oz really looks like in all of this. And I'm glad you mentioned the clients portion. There's no reason why that should be an elephant in the room. It just is in our industry. So we're going to try to be a little bit different in the sense of we're secure enough in our relationships to want to bring people on to talk about the pain points of the industry, talk about like what's the good and the bad and the ugly of what we do, and how we're kind of trying to take a little bit more of a unique approach through a lot of trial and error, emphasis on the error. But I think through
error is experience.
Exactly.
And again, we're secure enough in our attachment style to understand that providing the good, the bad, the ugly to all the people is going to, help them understand what this experience is, but also help them understand like what a partnership is and who we are.
So let's broad scope the industry. I grew up in this industry. So for some reason, like I always knew about it and I always understood it. But from your perspective, someone who just opened their eyes to this world 5 years ago, what was it? And like, what was your understanding before of what we do?
Oh my gosh, girly. So it's so funny because
like she worked at the Ritz. Okay. So like you worked at the Ritz-Carlton, you saw an obscene amount of merchandise of what we currently do now. Did you ever give it a second thought of like, how did this get here? Who did we buy this from?
Quite literally, no. So
who picked this terrible product?
So it's funny because at the Ritz-Carlton, there was a swag room, which now like
you didn't even notice.
Exactly. I didn't know. I didn't care. I didn't like, I thought that the stuff that they had was really, really cool. They did a really good job with it. And I thought that it was really cool that they had this whole room that they would pass out to guests. Like one thing was a USB port, but like we uploaded presentations onto them, different time, whatever. But basically like they had really, really cool stuff. The hats were awesome. The bags were awesome, very on brand, cohesive. I remember being very excited about it.
Did you like the stuff? Like, did you like receiving it?
Well, so a lot of it, like I wasn't a part of that because I came in at like a very, very, very low peon level. But basically it's funny because, obviously COVID happened. I got furloughed indefinitely. And it was one of those things where like, what was I supposed to do next? It's funny, like my cousin, who's actually a buyer of SCG, reached out and said, hey, like Granny told me that you're unemployed. I'm like, oh, of course she did. But
Granny.
Basically, yeah, classic Granny. But basically, he was like, well, it's funny, like I actually like work with this company and they do a lot of they source my like my pen, my uniforms, my pens, my signage, and I was like, well, that's very broad, and so I didn't really understand what it was, but I was also able to like understand his enthusiasm about working with you guys, and that, he was just singing your praises in the sense of, I'm still working with them during COVID.
Yeah.
That you guys have something going on there.
So that's a good segue. So overview on that is you're working at the Ritz, you get furloughed. Your cousin is one of our clients that we have been working with for a couple of years at that point. And I'm sure he works, it's just like the divine intervention, because I'm sure in his role he's working with tons of what's considered vendors at that point. So for him to like pinpoint that you would be a good fit with us was just a little bit of perfection.
Exactly. Serendipity,
so
if you will.
Thank you. But it's interesting because at that point he told you to reach out to me, and we are in the height of COVID where, I mean, people are not, the only merchandise that people are buying right now is hand sanitizers and face masks. And like, thank you to whatever you believe in that phase is over. But that's like the position that we were in when all of this was happening. So fast forward a little bit, somehow he said something that made you be like, okay, well, let me just see what this is. You send me an email, and like, we'll show you all the email one day, but something in that email, I just felt like me and you were so similar. Like at this point, I was still in sales. I think I'm either still in sales or I'm just coming out.
You're just coming out
and needing people, like at that
to
point, I'm one of the most successful sales reps at the company. My father and my uncle are very panicked that I want to get out of sales, because in their mind, you don't take a successful horse out of the race, right? So my methodology with that is, you do if I can train 3, 4, 5 other horses to put into the race. That's kind of what I'm gunning for at this timeline from my chair. And then I get this email from you, and I see this like resemblance of the way we communicate. And I think that that's anybody who works with me, or anyone who has dealt with me in any way, knows that communication for me is one of my biggest strengths. Like the way I communicate, how I try to make sure that I am coming at every situation with communication at the top of mind, whatever. So that, I think, is what really ticked me off there, was your communication was very aligned with me. So even though that we're in the height of COVID here, I'm like, it can't hurt. Like, let's just see what this conversation even looks like. And then boom, that's how we officially met, but that's not how we should have met.
It's funny because Shane and I actually should have met
in college,
which
I'm not sure would have been a good thing, because like, I definitely don't want you to know me. I don't want you to know her, like that girl that was in college. And I don't know, I want to know you in college. Like maybe I do. I'm sure you were a lot of fun, but I take you so seriously because I didn't know you in college. And I think you take me more seriously because you didn't know me in college. I'm a very different person.
Girl, same, but so is the journey of life. But it's funny because obviously when you first connect with someone these days, what do? The first thing?
Look
them up. So we literally look at each other's Instagrams, of course.
I only had one mutual friend of yours, and it was my husband's cousin.
No, it was your roommate.
Oh, so
whatever. A handful of mutual friends, whatever. One is his husband, her husband's cousin. That's the elephant in the room. You're gonna get us canceled.
I was gonna say that might be cut. That might not make it.
Anywho, so it was literally your husband's cousin and your roommate at the time,
who both knew you and I didn't. So I thought that was weird. I'm like, how did these people know her? I would have run into you at some point.
Exactly.
But I think it's great that we didn't. So we fast forward and realize that we should have met in college.
We literally,
so much as you're my neighbor.
We literally lived in the same neighborhood, and by that I mean same neighborhood. And her now husband Brian was literally my next door neighbor.
You knew my dog, but you didn't know me.
I knew your dog. I knew Cooper before I knew you.
Yeah. So I think that is just like the icing on the cake of the weird scenario of how we should have met, how we did meet, and now how we're sitting here today.
And how it's
good enough recap, would you say?
I would say that is a very, very solid recap, in the sense of it gets you generally to where we are without like,
Now we still
spilling.
have some things to unpack.
Exactly. We still got a few like tricks up our sleeve and whatnot. But basically, those are things that like we'll proceed to, talk about.
At least everyone can understand why we're sitting here, besides the fact that you told me to sit here and we all know that I do as you say.
Of course. And you're such a good sport. But basically, like moving forward, this is going to be our open forum to be able to talk about what we have going on in the industry.
The good, bad, and the ugly.
The good, bad, and the ugly. And this is going to be released every Monday morning. So it's like a weekly situation. We'll be able to have like a little, sprinkle of what we have going on in our day to day. But also, we're going to have different conversations as far as, like
supply chain. We're going to have the different.
There's nothing as sexy as supply chain.
It really? Okay. So I hear you. It doesn't sound that way. But when you turn the lights off, and you dim them real low, she gets a lot sexier. So
dim them real low, put some ambient.
Supply chain, would you agree? Yes, it needs all the fixings, okay? It needs all the fixings. But would you agree that supply chain is in a lot of ways our secret sauce?
Oh, no, for sure. 100%.
So as it's like all the beauty on the inside.
Of course.
But you gotta look past some of the outside.
Of course.
Some of the packaging.
You dim those lights down low, you get the good music going, and I mean the rest is really, really special.
Yeah. I think that's like the main like expectations is just like, why are we different? What makes there's thousands of distributors, which is what we're classified as. There's thousands of them. And what makes SCG just like a little bit different besides our talent? I think that our team and our talent is by far our biggest asset. But then there's some other little golden nuggets along the way that maybe people might find interesting.
Yeah, and I think that this will be like an interesting conversation for not just even people in our immediate industry. I think that obviously we'll be able to help people buy better, but then also like teach other people that maybe aren't even corporate buyers, like just how to like stand out in a workplace. At the end of the day, we're marketers.
Maybe people who have no idea that this industry exists find out about it and they want to be our friend and come work here.
Maybe we're always looking for good talent, if that. So
if it happens to fall out of the sky via email, I mean, why not?
You just never know.
I know.
But you'll also just never know what you're going to get from this podcast. So be sure to tune in Monday mornings and you'll have a little bit more of us.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Au revoir.
Au revoir, brand connoisseurs.